is always going to be a much more powerful thing because it's something that AI doesn't have. AI doesn't have connection, and that's what we're all looking for. But I think at the same time, kind of like we've seen this kind of like teeter totter with food, right? With food, we've experienced over the last about 50 years a lot of fake bioengineered food. And now there's this becoming this greater demand for like real food, clean food, not just processed crap. And I think we're going to see the same thing in technology is like we're so tired of seeing fake things online and we're we're kind of shifting over to this space where we're looking for what's real.
Hey there, tech enthusiasts. Welcome to Tech Time with Sweet Tea, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of technology and how it can either serve you or, well, not serve you. Here is your host, Sweet Tea, and he's on a mission to help you harness the power of tech in your life. Join him as he chats with people about their tech journeys. From the latest gadgets to digital dilemmas, we'll explore it all. So grab your favorite device, hit that play button, and let's keep it real in the world of tech. Tech Time with Sweet Tea is here to help you stay plugged in and empowered. Let's get started.
So one thing when I first started, when I was I was glancing and I was first starting to follow you on like Instagram. One thing I noticed was like your trips and your travel, and I have a few questions related to that. Just get started right into it. Well, and like the big thing is like, what got you into like your traveling that you do? You're walking around the country and the world. Have you done the world yet?
Yeah, so I've always loved traveling since I was a kid. And when I was 18, I left home and spent pretty much that next year just traveling on the East Coast, living on my own. It had to do with work, but I just loved experiencing new cultures. So the walk across America in 2020 actually wasn't even on my radar, to be honest. So during COVID, I ended up working at this job that I just hated. And I convinced myself when I first got the job that this would lead to other opportunities. And to be honest with you, I got so impatient over the first couple of weeks working there. I started daydreaming about like backpacking the Appalachian and my friend Paul, I don't know if you've met Paul. Paul was there at the Summit of Greatness. He and I had planned on doing the Camino de Santiago in Astorga, Spain, but because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So when when a couple of weeks after I had this job, I'd been fired because it just wasn't a good fit. I think they knew that I didn't really care much about the position, and so um, I decided to go down to Phoenix, Arizona, to visit my friend Paul. That's where he was living. He just went through a breakup. He had finished teaching school down there, and so we're going to do a road trip to California and then come back to Utah. And he was just dealing with this breakup and talking about how he wanted to go on a long walk. And for me, I was just kind of seeing what was going on in the world, and I was just feeling this anxiousness to get out there and just see more of the world, right? So uh, one day we were driving from I think Long Beach to San Francisco, and I'm just seeing all the negativity online on both sides, with lockdowns versus COVID, um, Black Lives Matter, police officers, the election. So there's just a lot of contention going on. And I mentioned to Paul, I said, there's got to be something that we can do, more than just post a black picture. If you remember that, a lot of people were posting black pictures in support of Black Lives Matter. And I just kind of thought, like, well, if you're going to make an impact doing something, uh, I don't know if like just posting a black picture on social media is going to make a long lasting impact. And so I know that can be kind of a controversial statement to make, but that's when Paul turned to me and said, "What if we did a coast to coast walk across America for peace?" It's our kind of way of standing for unity and kindness. And as a storyteller, I wanted to share these, stories that we came across throughout the country and hopefully inspire people to, take action, do something. So anyway, that's kind of what led to cross country walk, and there's a lot more to it, of course, but that was my experience.
So do you do the true backpacking, like you under the skies, or do you like find a place to stay, like when you're like walking these areas, or are you like completely in nature?
Yeah, so the first couple of weeks were pretty rough. We were, we had our backpacks. We camped pretty much anywhere we could find a place. We would camp behind a church. We got kicked off church property once, uh, parks in the forest. And then about 2 weeks, yeah, it was about 3 weeks into our walk, we had a support driver that met up with us. So that helped a lot too, because that allowed us flexibility to mark our location and then, hop in the car and then find a place that might have been safer for us. Because, one thing that we didn't really consider on the walk was, where we would be at the end of every day. You just can't really plan on something like that. You can do your best, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be something that's going to come up. You can never really know for certain if a spot is even accessible for you to camp. So that support vehicle came in handy quite a bit.
So you're just, anywhere you can go. That's just going with the flow. Out of all the different places, the different walks, do you have a favorite place?
Yeah, I have a couple of places. So Yosemite was pretty amazing if you've ever been out there. And then, Colorado was another really scenic place because we went through there during the fall. So just, the colors and the landscape and everything was just incredible. And then more recently, I walked around the island of Oahu, and that's just a different level because it was coastal. So for the most part, I was walking alongside the ocean, and I just had these most scenic views throughout the entire experience.
Very nice. Where I want to go here? Where and talk about places. What, like maybe what's next? Is there a place that you haven't gone yet that you want to go, or what's the next place that you when you do this?
Yeah, so I have a few ideas. So, it's not like 2020 where uh, a lot of things were, I guess you could say, just not normal because, the lockdowns and everything. And so, anyway, it was just kind of an excuse for us to do that 7 month journey. Uh, the more recent one I did in Hawaii was about a week. And so because, I have a business now, and it's hard to just step away for that long of time to do something like that. I try to plan these walks that kind of fit within that time range of like within a week. At least for the next year or so. Who knows? Something could change in the next few years. But I do want to do the Camino de Santiago. I also plan on maybe next year walking from San Diego to LA. That would take about a week to do. And there's some international places, but I think I'm going to have to really research them, make sure that they're safe to walk through. Peru is one of them. I had plans maybe of like walking around the island of England. So we'll see. I have family out there, so it'd be good to connect with family.
Yeah, and this all fits in. Just yesterday, I was listening, watching to Lewis Howes podcast with talking with Bill Perkins when his latest, I think his latest episode, and he was mentioning how the talk was how you plan on spending your money or spending money down to zero and whatever, and about experiences and everything, and he got into remembering this without like trying to like avoid looking down at the notes and looking away from the camera. He was, see if I can just from memory here. Talk about like there's think about what you want to do, and it sounds like you're doing that, and like with your lesson plan now you have a business and everything, and if it's right in the moment, or maybe you think about when do you need it, why you there's the why, there's the what are you going to do, where are you going to go, when do you want to do this. And you told a story, it was a great conversation on talking with someone about that, about planning your future for your future self. And it was like when, like think about the when you do it, is it good for you now, or will you be able to do it in 10 years, or something like that. And that when you mention that, it's, my dog is playing in the background there. I just leave all that stuff of going with the flow, talking about going with the flow. And he it made me think about just listening to the episode just yesterday. And it sounds like you're doing that with that planning. Great job. Acknowledge you for just stepping out there and going with nature, because that's a lot of like what I like to talk about here, with stepping away from technology in a little bit and not avoiding it, but learning how to live with it. And maybe sometimes it calls for stepping away, and you
Yeah,
can completely do that in nature.
with the whole technology thing, I don't look at technology or social media as good or bad. I know there's a lot of judgment towards social media, but it's not social media, it's the person that's using it. And what I saw during 2020 was I felt like a lot of people were using it as a way to divide and to kind of uh, exaggerate the bad things that are going on in the country and throughout the world. And certainly those things are legitimate, but I think at the same time, like we can also use our social media platforms and technology to inspire and do good. And that was really one of the ideas with our walk, was to use social media as a way to reach people and to share our message. And it's a message that I believe everyone could get behind, because it wasn't political. It was, hey, we're walking for peace. All of us are looking for peace. And what I realized was that whole walk for peace wasn't about finding peace, although I think that you can do that. You can find peace in different parts of your external world. However, peace really came from within. So it's not like all of a sudden we made it to Washington, D.C. or Virginia Beach and we were at peace because we just did this walk. It was like we had to look within every day during these really challenging experiences we had, whether it was fires in the Colorado mountains, just arguments that my friend and I had all the time, just things that would happen, uh, not knowing where to sleep every night, that, I mean, it was like it got to the point where I had to ask myself, am I okay and with sleeping outside, in the freezing cold, and can I be at peace with this? And because that happened many times, and so I had to get really comfortable with asking myself that question. So anyway, um, yeah, I think that social media it's a wonderful thing. Technology is a great thing. It's just all about how we use it.
Totally, absolutely. I always like to think it's a great starting point, but like it's not the whole thing. It's a great connector, and then use it like to, like we've actually met in person, but like strive to meet to follow the people that you actually want to meet in person
I love,
and be interested.
yeah.
One last, I think I got into everything that I've just jotted down a few things that I just wanted to remind myself to ask and pull a quote here so I just so I don't butcher it. When you hear from quote from Bill Perkins in this episode, uh, I'll read it word for word as I wrote it. All resources at use all your resources at your disposal to make it happen. What comes to mind when you hear that quote?
What comes to my mind is being creative, and that was that was something that we had to do on our walk. Was we had to get resourceful. We had to get creative on how we were going to accomplish this massive goal that we had. And sometimes, and I think the other thing too is experiment. I've been a chef for about 20 years, and a big part of being a good chef is experimenting and using what you have. Sometimes it's not ideal, but you work with what you have, and it's all about perspective and how you see the situation. And from there, beautiful things can happen. So that's what comes to my mind.
So I you just point out reminding me I saw you posting stuff with food too. So you're a chef, you're a filmmaker, you do weddings, like so a little bit getting to before I get into my main like question. Who are you? What do you do? And who do you do it for?
Yeah. So since I was a kid, I've always had a lot of different interests. For a while, I wanted to be an actor and act in movies. Uh, wanted to be a public speaker. Also, really loved food and wanted to be a chef. And I had the ability to explore and to be creative in that sense because from kindergarten to about seventh grade, I was homeschooled. So I wasn't kind of in this rigid school system that teaches you to pick like one thing. I didn't really know how all these interests of mine could come together. I knew I had talents in each of these different areas. When I was in high school, I took a lot of drama classes, and I didn't see how. Now looking back, these are all experiences that I had to prepare me to where I am today. So I had, took drama classes. I started cooking when I was about 16. Working in restaurants and just refining my skills. My first job actually was at a movie theater, and I loved it. It was like one of my favorite jobs because uh, it was a brand new movie theater in southern Utah, and I could watch movies, throughout the week, and I just was captivated by great stories. And I even remember when I was a kid, I remember watching car commercials and thinking like, how cool would it be to like create car commercials? And so, because I grew up in Michigan, so my family's in the car industry, and I just love visual art. So anyway, fast forward over the throughout my 20s, I pretty much made a career out of sales. I was kind of chasing the dollar, and I'm really glad that I went down that path of sales because it taught me some really fundamental skills that I'm using now as an entrepreneur and someone who's started my own business. However, I'd always also go back to culinary arts. I just had this passion. I'm like, this is fun. This is it's different every day, and so I was always kind of torn between those two career paths. So I studied culinary arts, worked for one of the top catering companies here in the state of Utah, and just was kind of self-taught. I went to culinary school, quickly realized a lot of things I was learning there were things that I could learn on my own, or it just didn't make any sense for me to at that time to get a degree in culinary arts because I wasn't planning on working for someone. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to create content and cater for people, and it's not like I was wanting to work for a Michelin star restaurant, which would have been awesome. But like I said, I have this variety of different paths. And I was trying to figure out because everyone said, you got to get focused. You're all over the place. I was trying to figure out how these two things could come together. Well, then I started to develop this interest for, marketing and copywriting and, videography. And so it wasn't until really the last few years that I've kind of made sense of all these different passions and talents of mine and realized, cooking is always something I'm going to do. It's something that I use to connect with people, with friends, with family, and to make new friends. And I do catering on the side. I, cater events. I do retreats and things like that. However, for me, I knew that doing that isn't going to make me rich. Um, the key for me is if I want to make a lot of money, is to leverage something like content. Content, if you can make great content, that is the really lucrative thing right now in the space of social media. So for me, it's creating documentaries and short films and things like that. So that's kind of the path I'm on right now. Is ultimately make my own food content that incorporates travel. Because I love doing these walks and that inspires people and educates people. So anyway, that's kind of a long explanation, but that's where I am right now. I'm just able to like leverage all of these different gifts I've been given.
I don't know. Last question, the opening intro question. 20 minutes in, and it's been actually going pretty fast. If I can't remember it, that's fine. Getting some of these technology stuff, and where it goes into and I start out my I work in sports, and same here. Where if you watch movies for your job, working at the movie theater, you get to watch movies while you work, and I've for the last decade I've been watching sports. I've got big time, especially in hockey in 1999. Watching sports for a living. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So some things go right into technology. How do you think technology has changed the way we communicate with each other? Social media, phones, like anything like with that, and the impact is having on our relationships.
Yeah, so I think we're still kind of in the, I would say, childhood stages of modern technology. I'm talking about like the internet, because the internet is really what has revolutionized everything. It's what's allowed us to be able to have deeper forms of technology, like social media, for instance, which I consider it's a deep form of technology because it's where you can really connect with people, and that's a wonderful thing because I'll tell you this, and I don't want to spoil this because it's going to be my book that I'm writing about my walk across America. But I started off my book talking about this experience I recently had this year, and it was it was just right after July 4th, and I had met this guy in DC when we walked up the stairs to the Lincoln Memorial on January 4th, 2021, and I didn't realize the kind of impact this guy would make in my life over the next 3 years, or that would make in his life. For instance, when we continued our walk from DC to Virginia Beach, we stayed connected and he followed us. And he said that watching us get up every morning in the freezing cold and walking and finishing this walk really helped him when he was going through his own, issues with mental health and just, struggling to get out of bed. I didn't realize that we made that impact, but it was a big deal for him. Well, so over the next 3 years, we became really good friends. He's done a lot for me. He lives out in Palm Springs. He's brought me out there for vacation and just been a really wonderful friend. Well, anyway, so July 4th this year, or just after July 4th, I got a call from him, and he said, James, my 21-year-old daughter was kidnapped, and she's being held hostage for $500,000 down in La Paz, Mexico. And I don't have daughters, I don't have sisters. I have sisters-in-law, but I just can't imagine what that would be like, to go through that. So, long story short, and again, I'm not going to spoil this because I want you to read the book. I want your listeners to read the book, but we were able to find his daughter. And I'll say this, it has to do with the power of social media. And I'm grateful that there have been moments in between when I did the walk and recently where I got off social media. I pretty much unfollowed everyone. I only had it because I was doing client work. But now I'm not so shy about using it because that tool, because of that, it allowed us to find his daughter. And you know what? My friend didn't believe in God up until that point. Uh, he's turned his life completely around, stopped drinking, stopped smoking, has turned his life over to God. And, I just think like, wow, if it wasn't for the fact that we have social media, like we probably wouldn't have created this experience, right? This miracle. So anyway, and because of that, he took me to Hawaii. So I got to go to Hawaii like a week later, and it was like the most incredible experience. So you just never know. I would say like just don't shy away from using social media for good, because it's a powerful tool, and I think a lot of us don't really understand how powerful it really is.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I'll ask about that too. Book like when and and towards the end too, and I'll definitely give you a chance to plug plug that too. That it's again, it goes back to how we use it and why your intentions are you being intent on what you're going to look for, or are you just mindlessly scrolling? And if you just, how you use it and the intentions, and that was great. Like how we share, how we share our experiences, how we share our stories, and that was a great story shared on. Thanks for sharing that. So what this said, I think I already know the answer, but you think technology is making us more connected or more isolated? So being with blind screens and everything, you could feel isolated, but are we more connected or more isolated?
I think in a lot of ways we're more isolated, but we're starting to see a shift in that. We're starting to see a shift, especially after COVID. We're seeing more people using social media as a way to organize live events. Like I love Lewis House. We have that connection. And I love what he's doing. I love how he's not just creating an online community, but he's creating a community, that meets in person, and we create these relationships that, for me, are just one of the best things in my life. Uh, but it's because of social media, because if we all share this common thing, which is the podcast. We all listen to the podcast, and that's what draws us to his live events. So I would say, I don't know, it's hard to say. I think it's going to be different in every part of the world. I think here in Utah, um, we're getting better and better at getting out and really connecting with people live in person. I know in terms of dating, that's it's a struggle because you think about it, like you spend, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours a week scrolling, swiping on a dating app, and when that's time that you could be, going to some type of social event, or going somewhere where you'd want to meet the person you want to date in person. And I think we're starting to have this awakening in our consciousness regarding technology. So I think we're making some progress there.
Is you touched on a little bit before, the internet is a beast that we're just now starting to get a little bit even more into. Like, I remember the first times of dial up, and I don't, I don't know how I remember you were born, but 96, somewhere around there, dial up, and that was like the first hear that screech to thing, and you hog the phone line, and then what it's become from then to now, and it's you said it's just like a child, maybe early now teenager stage, and we're just now starting to see this beast that is the internet, and it's starting to take shape in that evolution.
Yeah, you look at even a platform like TikTok. TikTok has only been around for what, like 5 something years ish. Like it didn't really get big until like 2019, 2020, from what I remember. And so we're still learning how to use that, right? When you're so new to something like that, I think a lot of people will misuse it, but I think overall we're starting to leverage it in a positive way, or at least that's the way I'm going to choose to see things.
And you can just intent again goes back to Lewis goes back to I can't shout him out enough, and what they're doing over at greatness, it goes back to intention. You want to focus on the positive, and take the negative, take but focus on the positive, and share the positive more, at least.
Yeah.
Any ethical concerns the way about we use technology that you can see addressed, changed?
Oh yeah, totally. And I've been thinking about this for some time because I'm in the space of technology, right? Video creation, and there's always concern about you know uh, these they call them deep fakes, which is you can use AI to generate um, fake personas of you, or and that I have a friend. His name is Bobby James. He's an IT guy, but he's also been a public speaking coach for me. And we've talked about this, about how there's going to be a greater demand for IT security here in the few years because I think we're starting to see people abuse it. You've heard these stories about a grandmother getting a call from her granddaughter, and the granddaughter saying that she's in a lot of trouble and she needs a lot of money, and it's her voice, right? And the grandmother wires this person on the other line a bunch of money, and then it turns out to be a scam, right? Uh, these kind of situations are happening, and I think there's going to be a greater need for. Don't get me wrong. I think AI is a great tool, and I use it. I use ChatGPT when helping me to write content or ideas for content. It's not perfect. I think human creativity and genius is always going to be a much more powerful thing because it's something that AI doesn't have. AI doesn't have connection, and that's what we're all looking for. But I think at the same time, kind of like we've seen this kind of like teeter totter with food, right? With food, we've experienced over the last about 50 years a lot of fake bioengineered food. And now there's becoming this greater demand for like real food, clean food, not just processed crap. And I think we're going to see the same thing in technology is like we're so tired of seeing fake things online, and we're we're kind of shifting over to this space where we're looking for what's real. And that's why I'm not concerned at all about my job being replaced because at the end of the day, I have something that's real. AI is a tool. That's all it will ever be, and it should never replace us humans. It should just enhance what we're able to do. It should make us be more efficient in a lot of ways. removal, like editing. I think it's a great tool for editing. I love editing, but I have some friends that are videographers and they don't. And a tool like AI can help, speed up the editing process. At the end of the day, you still need somebody that goes out and films and shoots and gets that together. But yeah, anyway, those are just some of my thoughts about tech and what we could be experiencing here in the future.
I totally 100% agree with that. Like the AI, I use it too, and I don't use it for 100% for what I do. Like create the intros for this podcast as well, and you ask for it, and then you edit and you put in your own what comes from you as well. So you make it your own. So I agree that to use it, to not use it, to not go all in on it, but enhancing. And at the end of the day, I also agree that's why that we won't be replaced by it so much as some people fear, because it's still going to take that human experience, and I think that people will be looking for that more and more. Biggest challenges today when we're talking about AI, when we're talking about the how we keep being ourselves and everything, and with technology and that coming in, what do you think the biggest challenge facing today, and how you strive to overcome it?
I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to face here is really just getting in our own way. I know that might sound kind of cliche, but like, I think it's true. I think we're allowing technology to do a lot of things for us that we could be doing for ourselves. Um, and what I mean by that is we're getting kind of lazy. And I think one of our purposes here as humans is to be creators. And so, kind of like what I was saying before, if we're using technology to do everything for us, then I think we're choosing the path of complacency, and we're not growing ourselves. I mean, one of the reasons why I love these creative professions I'm in, like being a chef or a video creator, right, is it challenges me, and it gets me out of my own way. It helps me remove ego because it's not really about me. When I'm creating food, it's not just about me; it's about the people I'm serving. So I think for a lot of people, it's like the younger generation. I think they're going to lose a lot. They are so creative, but at the same time, I'm just curious to see how technology is going to play a part in that. If the younger generation is going to leverage that to help them become more creative, or if they're going to use it as a kind of a crutch. That makes sense. And and if it's going to get in the way of their own creative genius. So I guess we'll see. That's Those are some of my thoughts, at least.
Is there what is, or if it's something that you wish was didn't exist the way it did, or something that you would want to change, a device, a technology item. What is that? What issue? Like something you change or wish was different?
Mm. Well, I would say the phone because this is a piece of technology I think we use the most throughout the day. And I wish there's a way that we could, I don't know, in some ways, I wish there's a way that we could use it to, well, I think here's the thing. At the end of the day, it's really about the user. I can't really blame the technology because there are ways that we can limit our usage of it. I know that there are timers and things like that. Once you use your phone for a certain amount of time, the phone will shut off. But I feel like, I was at a party the other day, and you know, one person was just like on their phone pretty much the entire time, and I hate that we're so addicted. And I'm talking about myself too. But I wish we would, just not use it when we're in public settings as much, right? So
Get into that 1 second to like there's so many things, but that's an important thing. Like when being present and staying behind the screen, especially when you're in an in-person setting and you still want to be on that phone. There's things that maybe do not disturb, but like, you how do you point that out? I don't know. I don't want to say call that out, but how do you point that out, or do you just let it happen? Like you say, "Hey, I'm right here. You want to talk to me?" or something like that. How would you handle a situation like that?
yeah, that's a good question. I am not always the best at knowing how to kind of approach that because I want it to be tactful and I don't want others to feel bad. However, I think one of the best ways to approach the situation, really any situation, is by engaging that person with a question and drawing them into the group. But at the same time, I never want to like force or push somebody to do something that maybe they don't feel completely comfortable with, right? Um, Overall, I would say I'm happy if I have a friend at a party and they're just there, and I get it. Sometimes people are more introverted and they need to warm up to a group, and they're shy and they don't know how to like really interact. But I would say, yeah, just engaging through questions is like one of the best ways to get people, you know, their minds off of the phone and more into the present. So that's what I've done in the past.
Like an interview or or a documentary. Both I like the. There's a time I actually hated. Like I went to college. I was always taught to avoid editing, avoid post.
Mhm.
But I learned in my last year of college, I learned to really love video editing, and now I can't stop. I edit podcasts. I just love it now. One thing 10 years ago you wish that is here now. What 10 years ago that maybe wasn't here before that you wish was.
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see. I would have to say, I mean, in some ways, Chat GPT, because that would have been a great tool to have when I was in college. As far as editing goes, I know that's kind of a controversial thing to talk about, with college, and a lot of colleges are not, I don't think, fully utilizing Chat GPT, but uh, I would also say, like, just like the newer version of the iPhone, because the camera is amazing and uh, it's made such a difference. I use it for work a lot, taking videos or photos. So yeah, I would say probably the iPhone 14 or the 15.
All right, getting down the last few here, and we touched on it already. I think getting like all these questions. Uh, do you think technology is making us more creative or less creative?
Ooh, I think it's both, really. Kind of like what I was talking about before. I think we're seeing a lot of people do creative things with technology, but it's also for those that are not like conscious and have an intention. We talked a lot about intention. It's making them lazy and making them less creative. Because so, for instance, like even as a food creator, right? I look at other food content creators and get inspiration from it, but I don't want to use it as a crutch because a lot of times when I'm creating something, I want to just challenge myself and see if I can create something from whatever ingredients I have. And, you know, to me, like going on social media or like on the internet and using that as a cheat code. And now, like, you could take, like, if I had like five basic ingredients, I could go on to ChatGPT, probably throw it in, and it could populate some type of recipe for me, right? I don't necessarily consider that creativity. I guess the approach is kind of creative, but using my own intuitiveness would really be the ultimate sign of creativity.
Couple more of the questions I have left here from the prepared questions. How do you balance with taking the good with the bad, positive, the negative? How do you balance the benefits of technology with the downsides? You know, when you're thinking of like addiction, distraction, when you get into people who are like ADD and everything, loss of privacy, and
Mhm.
how do you balance the good with the bad?
Well, I think for one, you have to create boundaries, clear boundaries with yourself. One thing I strive to do is keep my laptop or I use my cell phone as an alarm as of right now, but keeping it in a separate room. Brendan Burchard talks a lot about this. He talks about how, if first thing you're doing when you're waking up, and I'm awful at this, by the way. If you're looking at your phone the first thing in the morning, it just decreases your productivity. And so it means that you're more likely to check your phone throughout the day. And so I would say just like really setting clear boundaries and setting the tone at the beginning of the day to use it. Uh, I strive to use my phone in the morning, just kind of check the weather. But I think everyone has to find what works for them. I'm still learning how to take that own piece of advice and apply it to my life. It's getting better, but everyone's different.
I like what and I heard like going back to something that like Lewis Howes always would preach about. Like he would actually preach do the like three things like your morning routine. Like if are you familiar with the millionaire mindset, the little small book that he wrote,
Oh yeah.
and he talks about the morning routine. Do three things that you to do before you go to touch your phone. Those are three things, simple things: brush your teeth,
Drink
make your
water,
bed,
go on a
drink
walk.
water, go walk. Three things at least or more before you ever touch your phone. And that could be give a huge boost and maybe a more productive day. I always like that, like when talking about morning routine. And last one, I like to get, and we'll get into this stuff here too. Where can people find you, contact you, and where do you like hanging out on social media the most?
I spend the most time on Instagram. I just like that platform the best. And my username is James Allen Thompson, ALAN. A lot of people are wondering. And they can find my other account. I have a chef account. I have a videography account that I'm working on building. As a creator of other people, I tend to focus on creating their content, and I don't create a lot of my own other than my own personal stuff. But yeah, so face. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's about it. I have TikTok. I don't really use it, but Instagram is probably the best place.
And getting down to these three final a model like this podcast is inspiration following the School of Greatness. I kind of modeled it. I was like kind of asking like the same bonus and the questions that Lewis was asked, but changed it up a little bit, but still modeled that way. And these bonus questions now may or may not have prepared, heard, but just kind of get you thinking off the cuff. And How can people, businesses, individuals work together to ensure new technologies are developed and deployed in a responsible and sustainable way to benefit society?
I think having open conversations about this is going to be the first step, and being honest and vulnerable and sharing the pros and the cons of using technology. I think we need to start having more of these conversations and not throwing judgment towards technology. I think if we're going to make progress, we need to remove the judgment, and just try to listen to each other.
Here is my three truths question, what I call my three truths. When it comes to our constant companion, the phone device, what are three undeniable truths you've observed about their impact on our lives?
I would say they are a great resource. They create tech connectivity, and they can help with productivity.
They can be that assistant. And then crucial lessons that we should all learn in handling these powerful tools responsibly and mindfully.
I would say, you know, find harmony with it. Find ways where you can take a break from it. And for me, that's sometimes going on these long walks where I'm more focused on walking than I am scrolling on my phone, because I have to. I have to be aware of my surroundings. So find what works for you. To test different things. See, don't be afraid to fail.
All right, and before I get to the final question, tell me more about like when do you plan on launching this book? Talk about the book and just give time for the book right now.
Yeah. So I've been working on this book for 3 years since we finished our walk in 2021. It wasn't ready really to be finished until I had that experience with my friend, over the summer. And so I'm hoping for it to be finished beginning of the year. I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking to self-publish initially, but I'm also looking at working maybe with some publishers. So the goal is beginning of the year, and then who knows? Maybe there will be some different editions throughout the year as I try to hone in on. There's so many stories. I mean, we walked for 203 days, so you can imagine there's just dozens of stories every single day, different things that happen. And so for me, it's been just learning how to focus on like a dozen of those maybe, and then just find ways for them to all connect. That's the plan right now.
So you're still at the publishing phase of it. So at the beginning of the year, you'll work on maybe self publishing.
I think so, at least an ebook.
All right, all right. So I look out for more on that, and interested in to see when that comes out, and wish you acknowledge you for putting all your stories together from all your walks, because like that's definitely what drew me to like all your walks. That definitely interested in that. Is there anything else that maybe didn't mention before I get to the final question?
I don't think so.
Uh, and last question, might again, what is your definition of innovation?
Innovation for me is taking maybe two existing ideas and then bringing them together to create something powerful and more uh, helpful to society.
two people, two ideas, bring them come together
Yeah,
and making a whole new idea
and
for the
creating
future.
creating synergy around two. It's I think that's really one way to look at innovation. I think there's I've heard this before, but there's two forms of innovation. One is intersectional and one is directional. So, like an iPhone is a form of directional innovation, where you have a piece of technology that improves incrementally, and then intersectional innovation is where you have like a Reese's peanut butter cup, right? It's like chocolate and peanut butter, and you bring those things together and you create a different product. I guess you could say the iPhone is like an example of that too, because iPhone is computer, it's a MP3 player, it's a phone, it's a lot of things, and they brought them all together, but they're also incrementally making it better.
All right, love it. Thanks. This was fun. Thanks for taking some time to talk to me today, and hope come have you back on in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tommy.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. It's always a blast exploring the tech universe with you. But alas, it's time to wrap things up. If you've got burning tech questions or just want to say hello, remember you can reach out to us on our website, social media, or drop us an email. We love hearing from you. And if you found this episode as electrifying as we did, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us keep the tech goodness flowing. Don't forget to share Tech Time with Sweet Tea with your fellow techies. The more, the merrier, right? As we sign off today, always remember that tech is a tool and it's here to serve you. So use it wisely, explore fearlessly, and keep it real in your tech adventures. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep rocking the digital world. Catch you on the next episode of Tech Time with Sweet Tea.